The desert was silent. Only the wind moved across the dry red sand. The sky above was dark, even though it was day. Something strange covered the sun, like the world was holding its breath. Then, the ship came. It was not like any normal spaceship. This one was black and huge. The sound of its engines shook the ground. Birds flew away, animals ran. Even the earth seemed to tremble. Inside the ship was the most powerful military team in the galaxy, Unit Omega. Every soldier wore black armor with silver lines. Their helmets glowed blue. These were not normal fighters. They were the best of the best, trained for war, modified with alien tech, stronger, faster, smarter than anything known, and their mission? Stop one human, that's all. One man, but not just any man. His name was Daniel Rook. The council did not know much about him. No birth records, no history, no home. He just appeared one day. He lived alone in the middle of a dead desert. No power, no water, no communication. Yet somehow, he was the cause of a galaxy-wide signal disturbance. Planets lost contact. Military, AI froze. Satellites turned to dust. Everything pointed back to Earth, to Daniel. So the council sent Unit Omega. They thought it would be easy. Captain Varnock, the leader of Omega, stepped off the ship first. His armor was twice as heavy as any soldier's. He carried a plasma blade on his back. His red eyes scanned the area. "He's here," one soldier said. "North, 5 kilometers. Standing still." "No guards?" Varnock asked. "None. No weapons. No signs of energy." Varnock smiled. "Then let's go meet him." The soldiers moved fast, silent like shadows. Their boots left no print. Their armor made no sound. Even animals could not hear them coming. But Daniel already knew. He stood on a small hill, hands behind his back. His clothes were simple, old. Jeans, a grey shirt, no shoes. His hair was dark, messy. His eyes, it's strange, they were calm, too calm. He saw the soldiers approach from far away, 50 of them moving in a perfect line. But Daniel didn't move. He didn't run. He didn't even look surprised. He just smiled. Varnock stepped forward. "Daniel Rook," he said, voice deep through his helmet. "You are under arrest by order of the Galactic Council. You will surrender now." Daniel raised one eyebrow. "Really? That's how you start? You're responsible for signal disruptions across 12 sectors. You're a danger." Daniel chuckled. "A danger? To who? Your computers? Your metal toys?" Varnock didn't like the tone. He lifted his hand. All soldiers raised their weapons. "You will come with us, or we will take you by force." Daniel finally moved. He looked around at the empty desert. No cities, no people. Smart. You knew this would get messy. "We're not here to talk," Daniel nodded slowly. "Neither am I." Then he smiled again. The ground cracked. At first, it was soft. A few small lines in the sand, then louder, stronger. The earth split. The soldiers stepped back in surprise. "What is this?" one yelled. A shockwave pushed through the sand like a wave in the ocean. It didn't touch Daniel, but it knocked 2 soldiers off their feet. "Scan him!" Varnock shouted. A soldier aimed a scanner. It blinked red. "Error," he said. "Reading unknown energy. Power level. Climbing." Climbing? To what? To infinity. Daniel raised his hand. Just one hand. Suddenly every soldier's weapon heated up. Metal bent. Energy packs burst. Sparks flew into the air. Their guns melted in their hands. What's happening?" someone shouted. "Fall back," Varnock ordered. "Form circle around him." They tried to move, but their legs didn't respond. One by one, the soldiers froze, not by force, but by fear. Daniel walked toward them slowly, not fast, not aggressive, just calm. One soldier, brave or foolish, pulled a blade and charged. He reached Daniel in 3 seconds. He fell in 2. Daniel didn't even touch him. He just stared. The soldier dropped, screaming, hands over his helmet. I saw... What did you see? Varnock shouted, but the soldier was shaking on the ground, crying. Varnock activated emergency override. Fall back to the ship. Now. But Daniel didn't let them leave. He looked up at the sky. And the ship, the great mighty ship that brought the best warriors, shut down. Engines off, weapons off, lights off. The ship began to sink into the sand as if something below was pulling it. No! Varnock screamed. How? What are you? Daniel stopped walking. His voice became colder. You came to my home, pointed weapons at me, called me dangerous. He looked at Varnock. You have no idea what danger means. Then something rose from the ground, a black object, shaped like a box, floating, humming with deep sound. The Omega soldiers stared at it. None of them had seen such technology. It was not human, not alien. It was older. Daniel turned to it and touched it gently. Light appeared in the sky, a pattern, a signal. Far across the stars on distant planets, machines picked up the pulse. A warning. Tell the Council, Daniel said quietly. Earth is not a target. It is a prison. I am its last guard. Varnock's eyes widened. What is inside? Daniel's smirk returned. You really don't want to know. The desert was no longer quiet. The soldiers of Unit Omega sat inside their damaged ship. Their armor was burned, their weapons melted. One soldier still screamed in the corner, hands over his head. No one could explain what had happened. Daniel, Rook, just one human, had destroyed their best tools without lifting a finger. Commander Varnock stood in front of the team. He stared at the sandstorm outside. His fists were tight, his jaw locked. This mission is not over, he said finally. The team looked up, confused. He overpowered our weapons, a lieutenant said. Shut down the ship. We need reinforcements. No, Varnock growled. He humiliated us. That cannot stand. Another officer, a tall creature with 4 arms, spoke calmly. Then what do you want us to do? Charge him again? Varnock turned slowly. We set the traps. Unit Omega had tech built for war. They had traps designed to catch monsters twice the size of buildings, devices that could freeze time for 5 seconds, fields that could pull a person's blood out through their skin. These traps were never used on a human before. Now they would be. Hours later. The desert changed. Hidden in the sand were pressure mines. Invisible drones flew overhead. A cage of energy, thin as air, surrounded the valley. Daniel Rook walked right into the middle of it. They watched from the ship. He's coming again, one soldier whispered. Daniel's steps were soft, calm, his hands still behind his back. He didn't bring a weapon, didn't wear armor. He looked like someone out for a peaceful walk. But the team knew better. Wait until he's 2 meters in, Varnock ordered. Then trigger every trap. Daniel stepped onto the pressure zone. Click, 30 mines armed. 1,000 metal darts aimed up at his legs, but the mines didn't explode. They shook, then stopped. A small beep came from each one, then silence. Detonation. Failed, one soldier whispered. How? Daniel didn't even look down. He kept walking. Then came the time-slowing net. 4 drones above his head released a pulse that turned everything blue. Time slowed. Birds in the air froze mid-flight. The wind paused. Daniel stopped. He looked up, he blinked, and the pulse broke. All 4 drones sparked and crashed to the ground. Time snapped back to normal. Inside the ship, soldiers stared in horror. Activate the magnetic walls, Varnock shouted. Hidden, towers rose from the sand, forming a giant square around Daniel. Blue lights flashed. The air became heavy. Electric energy filled the space. The trap could crush a war beast in seconds. Daniel tilted his head. He lifted one finger. The towers blinked, then turned off. One fell over. "He's not avoiding the traps," the tech officer said, voice shaking. "He's turning them off, without touching them." "He's playing with us," Varnock said. Then something happened they didn't expect. Daniel sat down, right in the middle of the trap zone, on the sand, legs crossed, calm. He looked up at the ship, and he waved. Varnock slammed his fist on the command table. "Deploy Hunter Squad. All of them." The ship opened, and 15 soldiers stepped out. These were not normal soldiers. They were cybernetic killers, half machine, half elite warrior, faster than light, smarter than most AI. Each one had fought in over 100 battles. One had destroyed a sun bomb with his bare hands, and they were angry. The Hunter Squad ran across the sand toward Daniel. He watched them come. His face showed no fear. 10 meters. 5 meters. One soldier jumped through the air with a blade aimed at Daniel's chest. He never landed. Daniel looked up. Just looked. The soldier froze mid-air. Not by any visible force, but something unseen. His body locked. His weapon shattered. He fell to the ground, shaking. Another soldier reached Daniel with a scream and fired his arm cannon at close range. The plasma blast flew straight and vanished. The light disappeared right before it touched Daniel's chest. Soldiers circled him. They tried every move they knew. Attacks from above, below, blades, lasers, even psychic shockwaves. None worked. Daniel didn't move once. One by one, the hunters fell. Some screamed in fear. Some cried. Some didn't move at all. Not dead, but not okay. Inside the ship, Varnock stared at the screen. "What are we dealing with?" he whispered. No one answered, because no one knew. After 20 minutes, Daniel stood up again. He brushed dust off his pants. And then he spoke. "Do you see it now?" he said, voice soft but clear. "I didn't stop you. You stopped yourselves. Your fear did all the work." He turned his back to them and began walking away. "Let your council know. Next time I won't be so kind." The Omega ship's doors stayed shut. No one followed him. No one moved. The desert was quiet again, except for one voice in the shadows of the ship. "He didn't destroy the traps," it whispered. "He convinced them not to work." The council was furious. They sent the best soldiers, the strongest weapons, and yet they had failed. One human, just one, had walked through it all like it was nothing. He melted guns, broke traps, made elite warriors collapse in fear. Now, the galaxy was watching. Was Earth stronger than anyone knew? The Council couldn't let fear grow. They needed to crush this problem before it turned into a rebellion, so they sent the one thing that had never failed: the Titan cannon. The Titan cannon was not a normal weapon. It was over 300 meters long, carried on a floating platform. It needed 5 power cores just to charge once. It was used only 2 times before. First, to destroy the Crag Moon during the Third Invasion. Second, to end the Battle of the Iron Sea on planet Vel. Both times, nothing survived. Now, it would aim at Daniel Rook. Unit Omega, still shaken and injured, watched as the cannon arrived. Commander Varnock stood at the edge of the platform. His armor cracked, his eyes red from sleepless hours, but his pride burned strong. "This ends today," he said. The crew around him nodded slowly. None of them believed it fully, but they had no choice left. The cannon floated above the desert, humming with power. The sand below turned to glass from the heat. Daniel stood once again on a hilltop. He saw the cannon in the distance. He didn't move. "Target locked," said the gunner. "Power at 87%, said the engineer. "Firing range in 20 seconds. "Send." "One warning," Varnock said. "Let's be polite." A voice message was sent to Daniel. It said only this: "You have one last chance to surrender." Daniel received the signal through the air. "No tech needed," he smiled and shook his head. The charge reached 100%. The sky darkened. Clouds formed above the cannon, pulled by the energy. Firing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Titan cannon fired, a beam of blue-white. Energy shot out with a roar. It wasn't just light, it was like a piece of a star had been launched from a gun. The beam hit the hill. It exploded. The ground cracked in a perfect circle. Sand turned to dust. The hill disappeared. A crater was formed wide and deep. Smoke and light covered everything. Nothing could survive that. Nothing. The dust took 3 minutes to settle. Varnock watched closely through the scope. Then he stopped breathing. A shape stood in the middle of the crater. Daniel. Not burned. Not hurt. Not even dirty. He stood on a small patch of untouched ground. Around him, everything had turned to ash. And still, he smiled. "How?" the engineer whispered. "That was a planet killer." Daniel looked straight at the cannon. His eyes seemed to shine with a faint blue light now. Then he raised one hand and pointed at the weapon. Not fast, not angry. Just a single motion. The cannon stopped humming, then it cracked. Sparks flew. The entire back half of the platform blew apart. Power cores exploded. Parts of the cannon fell into the sand, burning. And Daniel just lowered his hand again. Varnock screamed into his comm, "Get me the Council, now. He's not just human. He's something else." High above the desert, far past the clouds, Council warships watched from orbit. They saw everything. The Titan cannon destroyed, Omega's best warriors broken, and Daniel untouched. One Council member stared at the screen. "This human is impossible." Another replied, "No, he's worse than that. He's a reminder." "A reminder of what?" The old Council member said, "That some things were never meant to be woken." Back on Earth, Daniel walked across the broken desert. He moved slowly, calmly, as if enjoying the breeze. Behind him, the remains of the Titan cannon still smoked. He didn't look back. Then he stopped. He looked at the ground and whispered one word: soon. Underground, something moved. Far below the sand, metal shifted. Old machines, long buried, started to hum. A hidden vault, sealed for over 10,000 years, began to glow. It waited for one signal, one voice, and now it had heard it. Back at the Omega camp, the surviving soldiers stared at the crater. None spoke. One whispered, "We hit him with the strongest weapon in the galaxy." Another answered, and he stood there like it was nothing. "What is he?" one asked. Commander Varnock stepped away from the others. He didn't answer the question, because deep inside, he didn't want to know. Far across the galaxy, in a quiet chamber lit by stars, the Council called for emergency silence. They used a code that hadn't been activated in 1,000 years. Containment Class Prime. The only time this code was ever used was when something older than history returned. And now they feared Daniel wasn't just a man, they feared he was a guardian, or worse, a key. The Council did something they hadn't done in 10,000 years. They called the 13th Circle. It was a secret group. Even most generals didn't know it existed. It included only 5 beings, not politicians, not commanders, but eliminators, experts, in one thing only: destruction of unacceptable threats. And now, Daniel Rook was marked as unacceptable. One of them, a being named Selnar, had once burned the oceans of the planet Kyrith. Another, Unit 01, was a living machine who erased a black hole cult with just a whisper. The Council did not call them easily, but fear had spread. Every report from Earth spoke the same truth. He doesn't use power. Power answers him. Meanwhile, Earth stayed quiet. Daniel walked alone through ruined deserts, burnt forests, and collapsed caves. He didn't hide. He didn't run. He seemed to be waiting. The trap zone was still there, destroyed. The Omega camp was abandoned, and the crater from the Titan cannon still steamed. That's where the 13th Circle landed. They arrived without sound. No bright ships, no loud weapons, just 5 shadows standing in the dust, each one different, each one terrifying. Daniel stood in the middle of the crater again. He looked up as they appeared. He smiled like he had been expecting them. Selna stepped forward first. A being with no face, just fire where a head should be. His voice sounded like wind in a storm. "You are not human." Daniel tilted his head. "Funny, that's what the other said. Your existence is a threat to the balance." "Whose balance?" Daniel asked softly. Selnar didn't answer. Instead, he raised his hand. Lightning formed above them, but it wasn't normal lightning. It bent in shapes, made sounds like screaming metal. It struck down from the sky, hundreds of bolts in one instant. The whole ground turned white. Silence. Dust. Then, Daniel walked forward. Slowly, the lightning had left no mark on him. Selna stepped back. The second figure, Unit 01, activated a cube. On its shoulder, the cube opened mid-air. Inside was something black. It didn't shine. It didn't move. But it made the air around it twist and crack. It was called a world-ender fragment. Dropped on a planet, it would erase it completely. Memories, time, space, all gone. Unit 01 dropped it on Daniel. Everything paused. The cube touched him, and nothing. The cube stopped working. Unit 01 looked at it, confused. The blackness inside it turned white, then clear. Then it vanished, like it was afraid. Daniel smiled again. "That was interesting," he said. "Got more." The third eliminator was Riln, a mind creature. It didn't speak. It moved through thought. Its power wasn't in fire or metal. It entered minds, changed them, crushed them. Riln floated toward Daniel and tried to enter his thoughts. The moment it touched Daniel's mind, it screamed, a high, horrible sound. Riln fell out of the sky, rolling, shaking, eyes wide in terror. "No!" it cried. "There's something else in there, something watching." "It saw me." The others froze. Daniel looked up at them. "You came, thinking I was the danger." He took one slow step forward. "You never asked what I was protecting you from." The fourth eliminator, a silent warrior called the Bone Wielder, pulled out a blade made from ancient stardust bones. No one had survived a cut from it. He didn't say a word. He rushed at Daniel. The blade touched Daniel's skin and broke. Just snapped in half like dry wood. The Bone Wielder fell to one knee, staring at the broken weapon in disbelief. Daniel looked down at him and said quietly, "You should not have brought bones near the key." The Bone Wielder dropped the rest of the blade and backed away. Only one eliminator was left. The fifth, the most feared. Catrax, the living void. A dark figure. Covered in shadow, no eyes, no mouth, just a black hole inside a humanoid shape. Catrax spoke in all voices at once. "I am the end." Daniel's smile faded. He looked serious now. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "You might wake it." Catrax didn't care. It rushed forward. The moment it touched the edge of Daniel's shadow, the sky turned red. The ground opened, and the wind began to scream. Not blow. Scream. Far away, Omega's old satellite activated. An old message played in its broken voice. Warning. Gate pressure rising. Earth lock failing. Do not engage the human. Repeat, do not engage. But it was too late. The ground near Daniel exploded upward. A tower rose, made of stone and light, symbols carved into it, ones no species in the galaxy could read, except Daniel. He reached out and touched the tower. The symbols glowed, the tower hummed, and everything stopped. The eliminators froze in place. They couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't think. Daniel looked at them. "This isn't about me anymore," he said. He looked up at the sky. They're waking up. In deep space, far from Earth, ancient machines activated. Eyes that hadn't opened in a million years blinked. Gates locked by time began to shake, and something whispered back. Not in words, but in hunger. Back in the crater, Daniel stood still. The tower faded back into the sand. The eliminators collapsed, gasping, defeated without a fight. He turned to them. "This was your final warning." He looked at the sky. "One more wrong move and the prison won't hold." The council did something they hadn't done in 10,000 years. They called the 13th Circle. It was a secret group. Even most generals didn't know it existed. It included only 5 beings, not politicians, not commanders, but eliminators. Experts in one thing only: destruction of unacceptable threats. And now, Daniel Rook was marked as unacceptable. One of them, a being named Selnar, had once burned the oceans of the planet Kyreth. Another, Unit 01, was a living machine who erased a black hole cult with just a whisper. The council did not call them easily, but fear had spread. Every report from Earth spoke the same truth. He doesn't use power. Power answers him. Meanwhile, Earth stayed quiet. Daniel walked alone through ruined deserts, burnt forests, and collapsed caves. He didn't hide. He didn't run. He seemed to be waiting. The trap zone was still there, destroyed. The Omega camp was abandoned, and the crater from the Titan cannon still steamed. That's where the 13th Circle landed. They arrived without sound. No bright ships, no loud weapons, just 5 shadows standing in the dust, each one different, each one terrifying. Daniel stood in the middle of the crater again. He looked up as they appeared. He smiled like he had been expecting them. Selnar stepped forward first. A being with no face. Just fire where a head should be. His voice sounded like wind in a storm. "You are not human." Daniel tilted his head. "Funny. That's what the others said. Your existence is a threat to the balance." "Whose balance?" Daniel asked softly. Selnar didn't answer. Instead, he raised his hand. Lightning formed above them. But it wasn't normal lightning. It bent in shapes, made sounds like screaming metal. It struck down from the sky, hundreds of bolts in one instant. The whole ground turned white. Silence. Dust. Then, Daniel walked forward. Slowly. The lightning had left no mark on him. Selnar stepped back. The second figure, Unit 01, activated a cube on its shoulder. The cube opened mid-air. Inside was something black. It didn't shine. It didn't move. But it made the air around it twist and crack. It was called a world-ender fragment. Dropped on a planet, it would erase it completely. Memories, time, space, all gone. Unit 01 dropped it on Daniel. Everything paused. The cube touched him, and nothing. The cube stopped working. Unit 01 looked at it, confused. The blackness inside it turned white, then clear. Then it vanished, like it was afraid. Daniel smiled again. "That was interesting," he said. "Got more?" The third eliminator was Riln, a mind creature. It didn't speak. It moved through thought. Its power wasn't in fire or metal. It entered minds, changed them, crushed them. Riln floated toward Daniel and tried to enter his thoughts. The moment it touched Daniel's mind, It screamed, a high, horrible sound. Riln fell out of the sky, rolling, shaking, eyes wide in terror. "No," it cried. "There's something else in there, something watching. It saw me." The others froze. Daniel looked up at them. "You came, thinking I was the danger." He took one slow step forward. "You never asked what I was protecting you from." The fourth Eliminator, a silent warrior called the Bone Wielder, pulled out a blade made from ancient stardust bones. No one had survived a cut from it. He didn't say a word. He rushed at Daniel. The blade touched Daniel's skin and broke, just snapped in half like dry wood. The Bone Wielder fell to one knee, staring at the broken weapon in disbelief. Daniel looked down at him and said quietly, "You should not have brought bones near the key." The Bone Wielder dropped the rest of the blade and backed away. Only one Eliminator was left. The fifth, the most feared, Catrax, the living void. A dark figure, covered in shadow, no eyes, no mouth, just a black hole inside a humanoid shape. Catrax spoke in all voices at once. "I am the end." Daniel's smile faded. He looked serious now. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "You might wake it." Catrax didn't care. It rushed forward. The moment it touched the edge of Daniel's shadow, the sky turned red. The ground opened and the wind began to scream. Not blow, scream. Far away, Omega's old satellite activated. An old message played in its broken voice. "Warning, gate pressure rising, Earth lock failing. Do not engage the human. Repeat, do not engage." But it was too late. The ground near Daniel exploded upward. A tower rose made of stone and light, symbols carved into it, ones no species in the galaxy could read, except Daniel. He reached out and touched the tower. The symbols glowed, the tower hummed, and everything stopped. The Eliminators froze in place. They couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't think. Daniel looked at them. "This isn't about me anymore," he said. He looked up at the sky. They're waking up. In deep space, far from Earth, ancient machines activated. Eyes that hadn't opened in 1,000,000 years blinked. Gates locked by time began to shake, and something whispered back. Not in words, but in hunger. Back in the crater, Daniel stood still, the eye. Galaxy grew quiet. After the 13th circle failed, no one dared to move. No ships flew near Earth. No signals were sent. Worlds that once mocked humans now shut their mouths. Council meetings turned into whispered fears. No one could understand how one man could stand against all their power. But what scared them more was what he might be protecting. Daniel Rook, the man who had faced world-destroying weapons without flinching, now walked toward an old place, a forgotten place. Hidden deep under the deserts of Earth, it was sealed by mountains and time. The Vault of Origin. The vault had no doors, no locks, just stone and light, and a feeling of deep pressure. In the chest, if you stood too close, it didn't look dangerous, but it felt wrong. Like something was behind the wall that should never see the stars again. Daniel stood before it. He looked tired now, not weak, but heavy, like he carried something no one else could see. He placed his hand on the stone. It pulsed once. Then, again, it knew him, it remembered him, and it spoke in a voice that wasn't a voice. "You are late." Daniel nodded slowly. "I know." "They are waking." Daniel closed his eyes. "I'm trying to stop that." Far above, Council satellites tried to scan the vault. They failed. Every scan sent back the same 3 words. Over and over. Not yours to know. In a council war room, high above planet Zahn, a group of scientists and generals sat in silence. Then one old woman stood. She spoke with a shaking voice. We thought we were the rulers of this galaxy. But we were just walking over the lid of a box, and now it's rattling. Back on Earth, deep under the stone, something moved. Not fast, not loud, but steady. It didn't break the seal. It waited. It knew it didn't need to fight. Because fear was spreading faster than war ever could. And soon, someone would make a mistake. Daniel sat at the base of the vault. He wasn't a soldier now. He wasn't smiling. He looked like a man sitting at a grave. Because the thing behind this wall wasn't evil. It was old, angry, and tired of being alone. He whispered, "They think I'm the weapon." He looked up at the stars. "They still don't understand. I'm the lock." Once, long ago, before the first council, before the stars had names, there was a war, not between species, but between thought and hunger. Some called them gods. Others called them mistakes. Daniel called them the Deep Ones. They didn't need ships or armies, just one whisper into the mind of a living being. And that being would turn into something else. Something hollow, something willing to feed the dark. Earth had been their prison, not because it was strong, but because it was hidden, sealed under old codes, wrapped in myths and forgotten by time. Until the council got curious, until they sent armies and weapons to test a human who wasn't meant to be tested. Now the prison trembled, and even Daniel, with all his power, could feel the cracks. One more battle, one more attack, and something would wake up that should never know freedom. Far across the stars on a moon colony, a child woke up screaming. He cried out a word his parents didn't understand. The Eater is coming." That child had never been to Earth, had never heard of Daniel, but the whisper had reached him. On another planet, machines stopped working. When engineers opened them, the wires inside had twisted into words. "You shook the lock. It's turning. He won't hold it forever." Back in the desert, Daniel stood once more. He faced the sky, not angry, but sad. He spoke out loud, not to the stars, but to the council. "Stop sending ships. Stop testing me. Because the next time I defend myself..." He paused. "I won't be the only thing that answers." Inside the vault, the surface glowed. Lines of red light moved through the stone. A deep voice echoed softly so only Daniel could hear. "Let me help you." "Together we could wipe them out," Daniel whispered back. "You don't want peace. You want to be seen again." "You're afraid of being forgotten," the voice chuckled. "We are already inside their dreams." Back at the council, fear turned to panic. Some wanted to launch more weapons, others begged to leave Earth alone forever. But one voice, cold and firm, said, "We cannot let one human hold the galaxy hostage. If the lock breaks, we'll just destroy the entire system." But deep down, they knew they wouldn't get the chance, because this human was no longer just human. He was something else now, not just alive, but chosen, not just strong, but anchored. He didn't pull power. Power came to him like rivers to the sea, because the vault needed him, and the galaxy feared what would happen if he ever walked away from it. The tower faded back into the sand. The eliminators collapsed, gasping. Defeated without a fight, he turned to them. "This was your final warning." He looked at the sky. "One more wrong move and the prison won't hold." The council was done waiting. They had failed with soldiers, failed with elites, failed with shadows and silence, and now the vault on Earth glowed brighter every cycle. Symbols on the stone pulsed like a heartbeat. The whispers reached further. Across colonies, across minds, the galaxy was holding its breath. So the council decided. They reached into their darkest archive, a weapon so old even they feared it. Project Endlight. This weapon was not alive. But it wasn't a machine either. It had been built from the bones of 3 dead gods, fueled by the cores of dying stars, and programmed by a language that erased itself after being written. The Council called it a god killer. It was used only once, against a world that dared to rise against the galaxy's control. That world didn't just vanish. It was unborn. Now the Council prepared it again. Target, Earth objective, erase the Guardian. Result, expected, total success. The god killer didn't land like a ship, it appeared. One moment, there was empty sky. The next, an object the size of a small moon hovered over Earth's desert. It made no sound, no movement, but birds dropped from the sky. Sand turned to glass. Satellites exploded without warning. It had arrived. Daniel looked up. He didn't blink, didn't run. He just smirked. The vault behind him pulsed faster. It recognized the threat, but it also recognized Daniel, and it waited, because it had seen this before and knew what would happen next. The god killer spoke. Its voice didn't come through the air. It filled every mind on Earth. Even animals froze. Even machines listened. Defense mechanism located. Life form, human. Threat level, nonsense. Begin unmaking. The sky tore open. Not fire. Not light, but nothing. A hole in space the size of a mountain opened above Daniel. It wasn't heat or energy. It was the absence of existence. Whatever it touched, it erased. It dropped toward Daniel. 1 second passed. 2. Then, crack, everything. Stopped. The hole in space froze mid-fall. The god killer stuttered. Error. Resistance detected. Recalculating. Daniel hadn't moved. He just stood, one hand in his pocket, and his eyes, glowing now, not red. Not white, but deep gray like thunderclouds ready to break. Then he spoke. 1 sentence, simple words, soft voice. That's not your power. I know who gave it to you. The god killer paused. Inside its core, ancient memories unlocked. Back from the war before stars had names, back when vaults were built to hold something, not protect it. And it remembered Daniel, not as a man, but as the echo. The last soul connected to the true seals. The one being the deep ones could never twist, because he had already looked into the darkness and said no. The god killer began to shake. It dropped lower, but not in attack. It lowered itself like a kneeling servant. Priority change. Target is not the lock. Target is the key. Key is compatible. Then it said something that no machine had ever said in the Council's history. Requesting guidance. Council cameras caught the moment. They watched the most powerful weapon in their empire, one they could barely control, kneel in front of a human. Every command they sent afterward failed. Every override was rejected. The god killer had made a choice. Daniel stepped forward. He touched the side of the machine's surface and whispered again, I don't need your help to destroy. But if you really want to serve something, help me hold the line. Inside the god killer, systems rewrote themselves. Programs meant for deletion restructured into defense barriers. Weapons aimed at the stars turned inward, now guarding the vault's skies. The machine was no longer a destroyer. It had become part of the lock. Across the galaxy, the Council panicked. This was worse than death. Their god killer had chosen Earth, chosen the man they tried to erase. And now, their worst fear came true. He wasn't alone anymore. The vault pulsed again. This time, not from warning, but from approval. Deep voice spoke through the stone, reaching only Daniel. You've gained another piece. But the hunger grows. Soon, even the stars won't be enough to silence it. Daniel nodded. I'll hold, he whispered, as long as I must. Then he turned to the sky, his eyes sharp, his voice calm. Let them come now. I'm done explaining. Back on Zarn Prime, the council head removed his crown. He looked at the stars and whispered in defeat. He didn't break the galaxy. We did, the moment we tried to touch what was never ours. The council's chambers were no longer filled with voices, no debates, no commands, only silence, because everything they had believed in was broken. Their greatest armies had failed, their secret weapons were gone, and the god-killer they created now knelt beside the human they tried to erase. They had mocked Earth, now they couldn't even look at it. So they did the only thing left. They ran. The plan was simple. Evacuate all council members to the hidden system of Varnix, a dead star protected by radiation storms. No signal in or out, a place forgotten by maps, known only to those high enough to fear what was coming. Thousands of escape ships lifted off from planets, moons, orbiting cities, all heading for Varnix. The council believed the human, Daniel, would never follow. He was still earthbound, locked to the vault, guarding the prison, so they believed they would be safe there. But as they approached Varnix, the sky turned wrong. Not red, not black, just dark in a way that made no sense. Sensors showed stars, but eyes saw only fog. Even light itself refused to move inside it. The ships paused. Then one scout, a young pilot from the Cryon colonies, sent a message. Something is here. Then his screen went black. So did the next one and the next, until nothing moved. Then, without warning, it arrived. Not a ship, not a being, a shape in the dark. Slow, tall, drifting, like a shadow that had grown too large for reality. Its eyes were not eyes, just holes that stared without blinking. It moved silently through the fleet, and ships began to vanish. Not explode, just disappear. Gone like dreams at morning. The council screamed orders. Engage, fire everything. Weapons flashed, but the dark swallowed every blast. No sound, no impact, only one whisper filled every ship. You shouldn't have touched the lock. The shadow turned toward the largest cruiser. Council leader Varro stood inside. He stared into the thing's face and shook. "Who are you?" he asked. The voice answered from inside his own thoughts. "I am the reminder. He held us down. But you woke the wind again." Varro fell to his knees. "We didn't mean to. You always mean to," the voice replied. "You always forget what you bury." Then the darkness paused. Every ship froze. Time itself felt still. And then one sound cut through it all. A human voice. "Enough." The shadow stopped. It turned slowly. And there, standing on a rock in open space, without a suit, without a ship, was Daniel. No one understood how he got there. He didn't fly. He didn't teleport. He just stood, like he had always been there. Even the shadow seemed unsure. "You left the vault," it said. Daniel nodded once. "Only for this. You can't stop me. I am what comes after peace." Daniel took a breath, then spoke softly. "No. You are what peace becomes when it's forgotten." He lifted his hand, not to strike, but to offer. "I won't kill you, because that's not what you fear. You fear being forgotten again. So remember this moment. You came to take the sky, but it belongs to those who bleed for it." The shadow screamed, not with sound, but with force. Every ship shook, metal cracked, stars pulsed, but Daniel stood still, and something began to glow behind him. The god-killer. It had followed him, and now its chest opened. Inside was not fire, not metal, but a mirror, a reflection of the shadow itself. The weapon didn't shoot, it simply showed the shadow what it had become. The shadow screamed again and began to shrink. Its form broke apart, turning into mist, then into dust, then into whispers. One. Final word echoed across the ships before it vanished. Locked. Again. The skies cleared. Stars returned. Silence followed. Then Daniel turned toward the fleet. He spoke once clearly to every council member. You tried to flee justice. But justice isn't coming for you. You brought it with you. Turned his back and vanished. Not teleported, just stepped away as if the universe itself moved around him. On Earth, the vault pulsed again. Calm now. Stable. Because the lock still held and the Guardian still watched. The council returned. Not in victory, but in silence. They would never speak of Varnix again. They would never test Earth again. Because even those who ruled the stars had seen what it looked like when the skies turned dark. He had done the impossible, stopped armies, turned weapons into allies, faced shadows older than stars, and now the galaxy watched him, not with fear, but with silence. Because Daniel Rook, Earth's guardian, was no longer just a man. He had become something greater, a symbol, a warning. And now, for the first time, he moved toward the vault, not to protect it, but to open it. The stone surface glowed as he approached. The desert was quiet. Wind still. Sky gray. Not a single bird moved. The God-Killer hovered nearby, silent and watching. It knew this moment was different. Daniel stood before the vault and spoke, not to it, but to whatever was inside. You've waited long enough. So have I. Let's finish this. The vault trembled. The earth cracked. Clouds swirled above, forming a spiral. The symbols on the stone walls spun like wheels, shifting and clicking into new shapes. Then, for the first time in known history, the vault opened, not with sound, not with light, just an emptiness, like a door to a place that existed outside time. Daniel walked in. The door closed behind him. Inside there was no floor. No walls, just space, not stars, not dark, just in between. And there in the center was a flame, floating, alive. It wasn't fire. It was memory, burning. The last piece of a being that once ruled with thought alone, one of the deep ones. It looked at him, not with eyes, but with heat. You came, it said. Daniel nodded. To end it. End what? It whispered. We are already ended. You locked us long ago. Daniel stepped closer, his voice steady. But I'm still tied to you. As long as you burn, I stay. The flame pulsed. You fear what would happen if I burned brighter. Daniel shook his head. No, I fear what would happen if I let someone else carry this. He sat before the flame. No weapons, no armor, just his will. And then he did something no one in the galaxy would believe. He placed his hand into the fire. There was no scream, no pain, just stillness. The flame wrapped around him, pulling memories from him. Wars, death, silence, loneliness. It saw all he had carried for so long. Why do you still hold us? The flame asked. Because if I don't, Daniel whispered, you'll find someone else. Outside, the God-Killer blinked once. Sensors went wild. The vault's energy levels rose past any known limit. Lightning struck the ground, over and over. Across the galaxy, people looked up. Some fell to their knees, others ran. Everyone felt it. Something was ending. Something was changing. Inside, Daniel stood again, the flame now inside him. He had become the final key, not a lock, not a guard, but the end of the chain. It's time, he said. You won't be passed down again. The flame spoke one last time. Will they remember you? Daniel smiled. They don't need to. They'll just feel safe again. Then he walked into the center of the chamber. The fire surrounded him. not burning him, but becoming him. And then he vanished. The vault sealed. The light faded, and the energy dropped to zero forever. No one would ever open it again. No one would ever hear its voice, because the thing inside was gone, taken, not destroyed, but absorbed by the one soul strong enough to carry it and bury it in silence. The council sent probes, scanners, ships, all found the same thing, a sealed vault, a quiet desert, no threats, no life, just one carving on the outside wall. It hadn't been there before. It read, "Held by one," so none would need to hold it again. And across the galaxy, warships powered down, borders went quiet. Even old enemies stopped fighting, not because they were afraid, but because they finally understood what true sacrifice looked like. In hidden places, songs were sung, not about war, but about a man who smiled when armies came for him, a man who faced death and didn't flinch, a man who walked into the fire so the stars could sleep in peace.